A strip of dark brown parchment rests beneath low amber light inside a climate-controlled archive. Its cracked surface bends slightly at the edges, and faded black ink still clings to the fibers after countless centuries. Every crease, every stain, every missing corner records the passage of time more faithfully than any modern photograph ever could. This is the kind of object that quietly survives while kingdoms disappear, libraries burn, and entire generations forget what once stood at the center of their understanding. One surviving manuscript can outlast an empire. One preserved page can raise questions that refuse to disappear. Among the ancient writings that have inspired centuries of discussion, few have attracted as much attention as the Book of Enoch. Although it was not included in most later biblical canons, it continued to circulate in some traditions, especially within the Ethiopian Church, while fragments connected to it were later found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Those discoveries transformed what many assumed had vanished into something historians could study directly. Instead of relying only on later copies or quotations, researchers suddenly had ancient textual evidence showing that Enochic literature had been read centuries before the time of Christ. That alone reshaped an important chapter of biblical history. Yet another question slowly emerged from those surviving texts. Hidden between descriptions of heavenly journeys, judgments, and cosmic order are repeated references to the human body, the passage of generations, and an ancient pattern that appears to connect human existence with the earliest chapters of Genesis. Rather than presenting the body as a random biological machine, the text repeatedly describes humanity as part of an ordered design established from the very beginning. Whether interpreted symbolically, theologically, or historically, this idea has continued to fascinate readers because it suggests that human life follows principles that are far older than civilization itself. In the next several minutes, you'll see what the text says, how ancient manuscripts preserve these descriptions, and why scholars continue to examine them today. If ancient biblical manuscripts and forgotten historical records fascinate you, hit subscribe. Every week, we uncover what was removed from scripture and history. But here's what makes this stranger. The deeper researchers compared surviving Enochic manuscripts with other ancient Jewish writings. The more they noticed recurring themes that seemed remarkably consistent across different collections, separated by centuries. Instead of isolated ideas appearing only once, the same patterns surfaced again and again in discussions about creation, time, human purpose, and the ordered structure of existence. That consistency has encouraged historians, textual scholars, and archaeologists to continue examining these documents with renewed interest. The question is no longer simply whether the Book of Enoch survived. The more intriguing question is why so many ancient communities considered its contents important enough to preserve for generations, even as the world around them changed beyond recognition. The renewed attention surrounding the Book of Enoch changed dramatically during the 20th century, as scholars gained access to additional manuscript evidence preserved in the caves overlooking the Dead Sea. Long before these discoveries, many historians believed the work had survived only through later Ethiopian manuscripts and scattered quotations recorded by early Christian writers. That assumption began to change when ancient fragments written in Aramaic were identified among the Dead Sea Scrolls, demonstrating that Enochic literature was already circulating centuries before the birth of Jesus. For textual historians, this was not a small correction. It fundamentally altered the timeline of how these writings developed and how widely they were read within Jewish communities of the Second Temple period. Instead of representing a late invention, the surviving fragments showed that the traditions contained in the Book of Enoch belonged to an intellectual and religious world that existed long before later debates about the biblical canon. This historical context matters because it places the text alongside other ancient writings that explored creation, human destiny, divine order, and the relationship between heaven and earth. Within that broader framework, one recurring idea becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Again and again, the Book of Enoch presents humanity as existing within an ordered structure established at creation. The movements of heavenly bodies follow appointed paths. Seasons arrive according to fixed boundaries. Time itself unfolds according to measured divisions, rather than random chance. Human life is described within that same pattern of order. The text repeatedly portrays creation as operating according to established laws that existed before human history began, suggesting that the body itself participates in a design that extends back to the earliest generations. This does not resemble a modern scientific explanation of genetics or biology. Instead, it reflects an ancient worldview in which physical existence, moral responsibility, and cosmic order remain deeply connected. For readers today, that language naturally raises intriguing questions. Why does the text return so often to cycles, generations, appointed times, and inherited consequences? Why does it describe humanity as functioning within boundaries that appear to have been established from the very beginning? These observations become even more interesting when compared with other ancient Jewish writings from roughly the same period, many of which also emphasize that creation operates according to laws established by God rather than by accident. The Book of Enoch develops that theme in remarkable detail, expanding it beyond the visible world into the structure of heaven itself. According to the text, nothing functions independently. The stars keep their courses. The winds have assigned directions. The seasons follow appointed divisions. Human beings likewise exist within an ordered creation whose foundations were established long before any individual life began. Whether one approaches these descriptions as theology, symbolism, or reflections of ancient belief, they reveal a consistent picture of humanity existing inside an ancient framework rather than outside it. That is the central idea that continues to attract historians, biblical scholars, and readers alike. If the text repeatedly insists that creation itself operates according to enduring patterns established from the beginning, then the possibility naturally emerges that human existence also reflects those same enduring patterns. An idea that becomes even more significant as we continue examining the remaining sections of the Book of Enoch. The section that has drawn the greatest attention from many readers is not the dramatic descriptions of heavenly visions, but the repeated emphasis on order, inheritance, and the continuity of creation from one generation to the next. Throughout the Book of Enoch, the world is presented as a carefully structured system in which nothing exists without purpose. The heavens move according to appointed courses. The earth produces its seasons in their proper times. Day follows night with dependable regularity. Even the lives of human beings are described as unfolding within boundaries that were established from the beginning. Rather than portraying humanity as separate from creation, the text consistently places people inside the same ordered framework that governs everything else. This perspective reflects a broader pattern found in several ancient Jewish writings, where creation is understood as an expression of divine wisdom rather than random development. In that setting, The human body is never treated as an isolated biological machine. It is part of a much larger design that connects physical life, moral responsibility, and the rhythm of the created world. This theme appears repeatedly as Enoch describes the relationship between heaven and earth, presenting both as parts of a unified order that continues to function generation after generation. The language is often symbolic, yet the underlying message remains remarkably consistent. Human life operates within an ancient framework that existed long before any individual was born. Every generation inherits the same world, lives under the same heavens, and experiences the same fundamental patterns established at creation. For that reason, the text frequently directs attention away from temporary events and back toward enduring principles. Kingdoms rise and fall, civilizations appear and disappear, human knowledge expands over centuries, yet the order of creation remains unchanged. The movements of the heavenly lights continue. The seasons return. Life begins, grows, ages, and ends, according to patterns that every generation recognizes. This emphasis on continuity explains why the Book of Enoch repeatedly encourages readers to observe the created order itself. Instead of focusing only on extraordinary events, it points toward the regularity that surrounds everyday existence. Ancient readers would have seen this as evidence of a creation governed by purpose rather than chance. Modern readers often notice something similar from a different perspective. Advances in biology have revealed countless inherited processes that quietly regulate growth, development, healing, and countless other functions without conscious control. Although the Book of Enoch does not describe these processes in scientific terms, its repeated insistence that creation operates according to established order has encouraged many people to reflect on the relationship between ancient theological ideas and modern observations about the remarkable consistency of life itself. Historians caution against reading modern science directly into ancient religious texts, yet they also acknowledge that these writings provide valuable insight into how early communities understood humanity's place within creation. Whether viewed through the lens of history, theology, or literature, the Book of Enoch consistently presents a world in which order precedes human existence and continues long after individual lives have passed away. That enduring vision forms one of the most distinctive features of the text and prepares the way for its later discussions about responsibility, judgment, and the future of humanity, all of which are built upon the assumption that the same ordered creation established in the beginning continues to govern the world today. As the Book of Enoch moves into its later sections, the focus gradually shifts from describing the structure of creation to explaining humanity's responsibility within that structure. The message becomes increasingly clear. Order was established before human history began, but people were given the freedom to either live in harmony with that order or reject it. The text repeatedly contrasts these two paths, presenting obedience as alignment with the design of creation and rebellion as a force that produces disorder, corruption, and eventual judgment. This theme runs consistently throughout the surviving manuscripts and helps explain why the work remained influential among certain Jewish communities during the Second Temple period. Rather than treating morality as a collection of isolated rules, the Book of Enoch presents ethical choices as actions that either preserve or disrupt the balance established by the Creator. In this worldview, human behavior is never disconnected from the wider order of the universe. Actions have consequences that extend beyond the individual because humanity exists within an interconnected creation. This perspective also helps explain the repeated emphasis on generations. The text often reminds readers that the decisions made in one age influence those who come after. Wisdom can be preserved and passed forward, but so can violence, injustice, and corruption. Each generation inherits both the created order established from the beginning and the consequences of those who came before. That pattern is described not as fate, but as a continuing reality of human history. When viewed through this lens, the title of this discussion begins to make more sense. The phrase, about the body, running a 6,000-year-old ancient program, should not be understood as a scientific claim hidden inside the manuscript. Instead, it reflects the broader theological idea that humanity continues to live within the same created order described in the earliest biblical traditions. The physical body still follows rhythms that people thousands of years ago could observe: birth, growth, maturity, aging, sleep, hunger, healing, and death. Ancient writers interpreted these enduring patterns as evidence of an ordered creation rather than random existence. Modern biology explains many of these processes through genetics, physiology, and evolution, while the Book of Enoch interprets them through the language of divine design and cosmic order. Although these are different frameworks, both recognize that human life operates according to consistent principles rather than constant unpredictability. This is one reason the Book of Enoch continues to attract attention far beyond religious circles. Historians study it because it illuminates the beliefs of ancient Judaism. Biblical scholars examine it because it influenced ideas found in later Jewish and early Christian literature. Linguists analyze its surviving Aramaic, Ge'ez, and Greek traditions to better understand how texts were transmitted across centuries. Archaeologists value the Dead Sea Scroll fragments because they provide physical evidence of the work's antiquity. Readers approach it for many different reasons, yet they often encounter the same recurring message. Humanity is not portrayed as existing apart from creation, but as participating within an ordered world whose foundations were laid from the beginning. Whether one interprets that message spiritually, historically, or symbolically, it remains one of the defining characteristics of the Book of Enoch and sets the stage for its concluding vision of accountability, restoration, and the enduring order that, according to the text, continues to govern creation across every generation. The final major movement of the Book of Enoch turns away from the present world and directs attention toward the future, but it does so by returning once again to the same central principle that has appeared throughout the text from beginning to end. Creation follows an established order, and history ultimately moves toward the restoration of that order. According to the surviving manuscripts, injustice is never presented as permanent. Corruption is never described as the final condition of humanity, and disorder is never allowed to define creation forever. Instead, Enoch's visions repeatedly describe a time when hidden actions are revealed, false power comes to an end, and everything is measured according to the standards established by the Creator from the very beginning. This expectation of accountability explains why the book places such strong emphasis on observation. Enoch is continually shown scenes, instructed to watch carefully, and commanded to record what he has seen for future generations. The written record itself becomes part of the message. Knowledge is preserved so that later readers can compare the condition of their own world with the patterns described in the ancient text. That idea has contributed to the continuing fascination surrounding the Book of Enoch. Readers separated by thousands of years continue asking whether the themes recorded in these manuscripts still speak to the modern world. Historians answer that question by pointing to the influence the work had on Jewish thought before the 1st century. Scholars note that fragments recovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls confirmed that these writings circulated widely long before many had previously assumed. Linguists emphasize how the surviving Aramaic fragments, together with later Ge'ez manuscripts, allow researchers to reconstruct much of the text with considerable confidence, despite the loss of earlier copies. Religious historians continue examining the relationship between Enochic literature and other ancient writings that explore creation, judgment, heavenly beings, and the destiny of humanity. Across these different fields of study, one conclusion remains remarkably consistent. The Book of Enoch is an important witness to the intellectual and spiritual world of ancient Judaism, offering valuable insight into how many people understood the relationship between God, creation, and humanity. That historical significance exists regardless of how individual readers interpret every passage. For some, the text serves primarily as a window into ancient religious thought. For others, it provides theological reflections that continue to inspire careful reading alongside the canonical scriptures. Still others approach it as an extraordinary literary work whose influence echoes through centuries of religious history. Whatever perspective one adopts, the recurring image remains striking. Humanity is portrayed as living within an ordered creation, whose foundations were established long before the rise of nations, empires, or modern civilization. The body continues to experience the same rhythms of life observed by ancient generations. The heavens continue their appointed courses. The seasons continue their predictable cycles. Time continues moving forward, exactly as it did for those early communities who first copied these manuscripts by hand. The Book of Enoch repeatedly invites readers to recognize that continuity. Its message is not that humanity has escaped the created order, but that every generation still lives within it. That enduring vision helps explain why this ancient work continues to attract readers across cultures, languages, and centuries, encouraging each new generation to examine both the world around them and their own place within the larger pattern of creation. The journey through the Book of Enoch ultimately brings us back to the same quiet image with which we began, a weathered sheet of ancient parchment resting beneath controlled light, its faded ink still carrying ideas that have survived far longer than the civilizations that first copied them. That manuscript has witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the spread of languages, the destruction of libraries, and centuries of debate about which writings should be preserved and which should remain outside the biblical canon used by most religious traditions. Yet despite all of those changes, the Book of Enoch continues to occupy a remarkable place in history. It remains part of the biblical canon of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, while its ancient Aramaic fragments, discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, have firmly established its importance within the religious world of Second Temple Judaism. Those discoveries transformed the discussion from speculation into historical investigation. Scholars no longer ask whether Enochic literature existed in antiquity. The surviving manuscripts demonstrate that it did. The continuing questions concern how these writings influenced later religious thought, why they remained so significant for certain communities, and what they reveal about the beliefs of the people who preserved them with such extraordinary care. Throughout this exploration, one theme has appeared again and again. The Book of Enoch consistently presents creation as an ordered reality established by God from the beginning. Humanity exists within that order rather than outside it. The heavens move according to appointed times. The earth continues its seasons. Life follows recognizable patterns that connect one generation to the next. Ancient writers understood these rhythms as signs of divine wisdom expressed through creation itself. Modern science describes many of the same observable patterns through biology, astronomy, chemistry, and physics, though it does so using entirely different methods and purposes. The two approaches are not identical, and they should not be confused with one another. Yet both begin with a shared observation that the universe operates according to consistent principles rather than complete chaos. That is one reason the Book of Enoch continues to inspire careful reading today. It encourages readers to pay attention to the created world, to the passage of time, to the responsibilities carried by each generation, and to the enduring search for wisdom. Whether approached as an ancient religious document, a historical source, or a window into the intellectual life of early Judaism, its value lies in the questions it continues to raise about humanity's place within creation. The title of this documentary speaks about an ancient program still running within the human body. If that phrase is understood through the perspective of the Book of Enoch itself, the message becomes clear. The text describes humanity as continuing to live within the same ordered creation established from the beginning. The rhythms of life have not changed. The passage of time has not changed. The dependence of human beings upon the created order has not changed. Across thousands of years, those realities remain recognizable. And perhaps that is why these ancient manuscripts continue to command attention. The parchment is still there. The ink is still visible. The words are still being studied. The questions are still being asked. And the remarkable conversation that began so many centuries ago continues, inviting every new generation to examine the evidence, consider the history, and reflect on what these enduring texts may still reveal about the world we inhabit today.